Good evening, everyone. It's been a while since I did one of these. Hope everyone is well. It is Memorial Day weekend. Hope everyone is safe. Hello, Sharon. Good to see you. Facebook changed some things, so I'm still learning where they put everything. Anyway, I figured I'd do something a little different and actually try and go through everything I own by one artist tonight. So I decided to go with T-Rex. T-Rex, I bought a bunch of stuff actually over the years, so figured I'd just go through it all. I had a few albums when I started working at Streetside back in the day, and then picked up quite a bit more as the years went on. We'll start with the first one I bought, and I believe I bought this at CD Reunion in Old Town, and it is Tyrannosaurus Rex Twofer, the beginning, and it actually has both his first album. My people were fair and had sky in their hair, but now they're content to wear stars on their brows. And then their second album, Prophets, Seers, and Sages. So if people don't know the history of T-Rex, he was in a band called John's Children, which is very electric. And they actually got kicked off the Who's tour because they were too rowdy. And then he was definitely someone who followed the trends for himself. And he even still has the little sticker on there, Joe. $6.99. I think I bought it back like 81. But he was known for he decided to go folky and hired Steve Peregrine Took, I believe, and did a lot of artsy. He went and saw, from my understanding, he saw Ravi Shankar and decided he was going to do that thing for a while. So that was an early album I picked up. I probably picked it up after I'd heard some of his poppy stuff and didn't listen to a lot of the early stuff on vinyl because, again, it is very folky and weird. But we'll try and match it with CDs as we go along. So I have this album called The Beginning of Doves, and it on CD. I don't have the vinyl of this one, but this is a lot of early demos in between John's Children and his first solo album. And Simon Napier Bell was the producer on this one. And then I have the deluxe edition, which actually has some of the John's Children stuff and a lot of demos. And when we get further along, we'll talk a little bit about this. The interesting thing with this thing is that they came back to those after he died. And then here's his first album, which I bought actually from Planet Score recently. The early remasters with bonus tracks sound pretty good. They're kind of a hard listen sometimes. Again, very folky, artsy stuff for a long time. So he did that for 2 or 3 albums. And then there's the CD, again, remastered bonus edition. I think I bought all 3 of these at Planet Score there. I think that was just last year. And then Unicorn, which was the last one he did, was Steve Peregrine Took, because he started, the other guy wanted to actually do some of his songs. And it was, when you were in T-Rex, it was all about Mark Bolan. Again, and he was following fads. He noticed pop music was kind of coming in. Oh, sorry, he did, T-Rex was kind of the beginning of the transition. Right there. Let me pull a little bit more vinyl out. We'll catch up on vinyl. Which I have Unicorn, and this I think I bought this as well from CD Reunion, and it was still sealed. I think I paid $4 or $5. There's also a lot of poetic readings in this. One nice cool thing being, again, I bought it sealed, and it still had the poster in it. So, T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex. And it's mostly a T-Rex with the two of them in their head there. I said, and this album was still sealed when I bought it in the 80s. So, and they were on Blue Thumb Records at that time. And that's the other thing. When we get to compilations, you can kind of divide his career up between before Bang a Gong and after Bang a Gong, because he changed labels. He was also a model. And in later life, let's see. There's the Bearded Stars album. Of course, he got front page because it was Mark Bolan's band, no matter what anyone said. And then we kind of get to where he decided to go electric. And apparently his fans thought he sold out, and he didn't care. So there's the T-Rex album. Again, and then it's when he changed to another bongo player. No one really noticed the difference. And about the time that they put out his first real hit single, I believe, Ride a White Swan and Summertime Blues. And he was starting to figure out the transition there. And let's see, I do have that on vinyl. And it's kind of a weird, again, he was deciding he wanted to be electric and he wanted to, so he's putting together a poster early on. He knew what he was planning to do. And in America, he was signed to Reprise Records for this. So this was about the changeover when he was starting to go pop. Note the $3.99 sticker there. I believe I bought that one. Actually, this one might have been from Mr. Records on Schutz Road. And then he started to really figure out to really change, and he went electric and put out the Electric Warrior. There's the classic Electric Warrior album. This one, I believe I bought it Backstage Records back in high school. And it's actually pretty clean. Still on Warner Brothers, Reprise. And from my understanding is John Peel, really hated this album and was not interested in playing it. And he blew off John Peel, and then supposedly they never had a good relationship after that. So let's see, let's pull out. And then we'll kind of go through as we get into, that's why he changed labels and had a little bit of success in America. But Electric Warrior, I actually have three versions of it, I believe. 3.5, I guess. Again, I've been buying stuff for too long, so I'm a nerd here. So here's the original Warner Brothers release on CD. Probably bought that, like I said, when CDs started coming out in the early 80s. And then I moved on to the first Rhino reissue, which was actually, other interesting note is Tony Vizzicati did a lot of his production, and he was good friends with David Bowie. And this is actually pretty nice. Has some bonus tracks and an interview. And then in the 90s, they reissued everything again. I'm sorry. And just recently, I'll give a shout out to Planet Score again. I bought the deluxe import of Planet's, and this is actually a really nice remaster and with a lot of bonus tracks. And this is also a funky album that has the, like, at the time, unreleased version of Planet. His stuff is weird because a lot of other people own the rights, so the state really doesn't get to do that. And then there's, after that was Electric Warrior, which actually, I'm sorry, The Slider, which I think is probably one of his best albums. There's my original Warner Brothers copy I bought in high school. Listened to a lot, actually. And then has some of his best music on there, I think. There's also, and Ringo Starr took the photography for that. That came from his movie. We'll go into that here in a second here. Again, and I've got the first version remasters from Polygram in the 80s, I believe. And then in the 90s, Rhino reissued it with the bonus CD. And there's the original bonus CD, which for a long time was only import. And then there's, at that time is when he put out the Born to Boogie movie. I used to have the VHS, and it was a bad print, but about 8 or 9 years ago, Roland Bowen, his only son, I actually went to Ringo Starr, and they drug out the old 16 millimeter film that Ringo shot himself, and it was all actually sitting in a shed at Ringo's. Had it cleaned up, and they put out a beautiful remastered DVD of it. I'm not sure if it's been put out on Blu-ray yet. Nice thing is they also had all the footage from the concert that they edited. So this too is the entire concert from that period, which was the height of his playing time. Ringo Starr makes a presence. There's a jam session with Elton John. And they were a lot of drugs when they made this movie. It's not very coherent, but it is a lot of fun. And that's from like 72. Then his star faded a little bit, but Tanks was the next album. Again, I think this was a Mr. Records purchase too. And this is I think it's an import version actually. This German import version I bought in high school. Because, like I said, he wasn't selling in the States. And again, I bought this in the 80s for $5. And then actually for my friends that know all my cheesy Christmas stuff, this is about the time he did a song called Christmas Bop, which I've used a couple times, and that's a bonus track on the 80s Polygram version. And then he also did the that was available on Etzel in Europe, and then in America was on Rhino. And these are really nice. They have a lot of nice remasters. It is a lot of fun, Joe. And said it's but there's a lot of great bonus tracks on here, and T-Rex definitely influenced a lot of people. And then after that, he did Futuristic Dragon. And this was about the time he met up with Gloria Jones, who was a Motown singer, his backup singer, and actually left his first wife to be with her. And but she was the original singer of Tainted Love. So his music kind of took a little more of a funk orientation. Alienated some fans, but kept a lot of them around. And then in the U.S. only, strangely, I don't have the CD down here, but he signed to Casablanca Records, which was definitely more dance orientated, and put out the album Light of Love. Again, this was a U.S. only, and it combined tracks from his next two albums, actually. It was quite a kind of a disco-y feel to the whole thing. I'm gonna turn this over and we'll keep talking here. But and I actually remember buying that one and kind of liking it. And again, and then those two follow-up albums were Mark Bolan's Zip Gun and Mark Bolan, Zinc Ally, and the Hidden Riders of Tomorrow. story is also that David Bowie kind of based some of Ziggy Stardust on the on him. Here's the U.S. Remastered version with bonus tracks from Rhino. Some nice stuff in both of these. And then his final album before he died was Dandy in the Underworld. And there's that version and that version as well. And I believe I have that on LP. Nope, I have Bull and Zip Gun, which has totally different artwork. For some reason in the 80s, I guess because he was, well, we'll go into that in a little bit, but there was a lot of confusion about who owned his rights, and all over they were reissued all the time. So there's Zip Gun Boogie, or Bull and Zip Gun. And this was always produced by Wizard Bahamas, which was his offshore holdings company that owned the rights to his music and had all the money, and for tax purposes. And when he died, it was a major mess. And then we'll get into some of the odds and ends I got besides that. Because there's a lot of weird stuff that's been put out over the years. This is a really nice soundtrack to the Born to Boogie. There's the actual soundtrack that was put out at the time they remastered it. And it also has the full concert recording as well. Done a really nice clean and remaster of that. And then I'm going to show you actually the first box set I bought, and I'll call out to Stephanie when I was working at Bridgeton, the Bridgeton Street Side Records. Essential, which was one that put all the 80s, put out this nice 3-disc box set. And it actually has some tracks you can't get anywhere else. A live radio broadcast that he did and talked, and had a nice booklet, and covered his career. Again, covered everything after Bang a Gong, because he changed labels after that. But this here was a really nice one of the first box sets I bought back in like 81, 82 at the Bridgeton Street Side. And it had a companion VHS cassette with a lot of live performances. We'll go into a few minutes about his TV show. And just because I'm a nerd, I have converted it to DVD. All right. And then let's see. This is a cheap import with a couple more performances by him on it, along with some other glam rockers. And then this is a weird, someone put out this. I'm not sure if it's even legit, but it's Star of Beards. It's a lot of alternate takes from Beard of Stars, and still pretty acoustic. And these I bought at our friends at Euclid Records at the tent sale recently, and there's a couple bootlegs, and have some pretty interesting stuff. Again, there's so many people have access to his tapes. There's a lot of bizarre bootlegs out there. There's alternate cover of Dandy in the Underworld that I picked up over the years, and that was on Mark on Wax. Again, when someone else was running the stuff. And then when they did the reissue in the 80s, I only picked up 2. I regret it. I've seen them a couple times for a high price, but there's Mark Bolan Unchained, and there were 8 volumes of this, and it was like alternate takes. A lot of them are all put together. Actually, this Rhino put out in the 90s covered a lot of it, but not near as much as all 8 CDs. There's the first version of Slider that I picked up on Relative Records. And then in the do a couple more here. There's the A's and B's. That's all his singles, because that's part of the Rhino reissue of the 90s. Nicely remastered. And this was an odds and ends singles that didn't catch anywhere else, remixes. they put out in, actually it was the early 90s on that one. And then this is one of a few live ones. This is live at the Rainbow in 77, actually shortly before he died. I believe Jack Green might have been playing guitar on that tour. And then when we're about done with CDs, we'll do a few more vinyl here in a second just because they're interesting. There is the T-Rex, the Electric Warrior alternate takes again. And then this was the early demos again. Most of them real acoustic. And we'll talk about that a little bit here. I'll pull this out. This is an album called Love to Death. And there's a single from it. The story behind that is those were the early singles from the beginning of Doves we showed at the beginning. And then Simon Napier Bell, after he died in a tragic accident, went and got those tapes. Here's the vinyl of that. You Scare Me to Death. And actually, the song You Scare Me to Death was originally entitled Horrible Breath. It was written for a breath mint. Anyway, they took the original singles. It's a nice comparison. You can pull the original songs. If you Google songs like Mustang Ford, you can ask for the acoustic version. And then they hired studio musicians in the 80s to record more rock sound backing tracks and re-released it. They actually put out 3 albums with that. The second one was called Billy Super Duper, which I do not have. The story behind that is that was actually a rock opera he was working on. And supposedly David Bowie used some of that information when he was working on a Ziggy Stardust project. Let's see here. And then got a couple more here. And so right before he died, and actually a week after he taped his last show of the first season, Mark Bolan had gotten an English show in England called the Mark Shows. And he declared himself the father of punk and had a lot of new punk bands. This is like 77, but he would perform every week. And this is actually a CD of a lot of those performances. 2 weeks after he taped the last show, he died in a car accident, ironically, because he never drove. But for years, he'd always told someone that he would die young in a car accident, which is exactly what he did. 2 more CDs, and then we'll look at some of the vinyl compilations I have. This one I picked up a while back, and it's very weird. It has a lot of tracks. It's a double CD. These were showing up in cutout bins for a long time. And I don't know what the deal is because it's totally different mixes. It's hard to read that. And it's definitely him singing, but I don't know if they re-recorded the tracks or what it was, but it's definitely not the original recordings. But it is interesting. And then this, actually another one I bought from the Euclid sale last summer. And it was on John Zorn's label. And it is a lot of underground jazz and hardcore bands doing tributes. He was a Jewish gentleman from England, as titled Great Jewish Music. If you want to hear some interesting stuff, Google John Zorn and listen to some of his stuff. Definitely worth a listen. All right, and then I've got a few compilations on vinyl I picked up over the years. We'll go through those real quick. This was for some reason in the 80s, a lot of stuff was coming from Australia. This was actually English. This is a double best of. The Main Man, Mark Bolan and T-Rex. Nice one. Let's see what else we got here. Solid Gold Easy Action. Put out there. This is in Australia. Very thin cover. On T-Rex label, already EMI T-Rex. Again, picked this up in high school. Probably bought it somewhere for like $3. And let's see. These are Italian. There's a ton of these different artists. The best of T-Rex things. Sometimes they're live. Sometimes it's a reissue of another album. But they don't tell you until you buy it. Bowlin' Boogie. It's a nice collection of pretty much all stuff from right after Electric Wire. Electric Wire and before, nothing beyond that. Again, that was kind of the changeover time for his label. And this was a Rhino issue in the 80s. It's an interview picture disc. Where's the Champagne? It's a very, very trippy mid-70s. He was very much into himself. In that interview, there's a single put out by the fan club before CDs were really cranking out the alternative tracks. A song called Life's the Gas and a couple other things on Cube Records, his own little label. And this one I should have bought in the 80s, but I didn't. But I recently picked up from our friends at Planet Score Records again. T-Rexacy, best of 70, 73. It's actually a very nice comp. And he actually, there was a companion videotape that actually had Adam Ant, because he was a big fan, narrating that, which I don't have. Someday I should need to pick up. Here's the last one. It's a full-on 70s photo of Mark Bolan looking like Mark Bolan did. He embraced glam big time. He's definitely, by a lot of people, the father of glam rock. And then, again, he had kind of a tragic ending. He had one son he named Roland Bolan. But because he was in between divorces when he died and all his money was in offshore accounts, up until recently, I think they finally might have resolved it, his first wife, who he hadn't quite divorced yet, she never saw any money, because when they did give her some, the tax man came for her because he owed millions of dollars to London tax man. And then, again, these companies still been putting money in accounts for years. And his new girlfriend and her son, which is his one son, never got any money either, except for like a small trust fund for his education. But there's millions of dollars of his sitting in offshore accounts that someone's been raking in for many years. All right, that's my long rattling on about T-Rex. Happy to hear anyone happy to do more of these in the future. And if there's a particular artist you want me to do, let me know, or I can start pulling out random boxes again. It's always nice to rattle on about the stuff I own here. Again, I always found T-Rex fascinating. David Bowie. Actually, you can Google the David Bowie. They were actually working on one song together and playing live on his very last show. They were going to work on a couple of things together, and right before he passed away, so it never happened. I think that's all I got on T-Rex. Again, definitely influenced a lot of bands. Violent Femmes have done covers. There's many people have done covers, and he was good at putting out songs. I know I read once where his vision was to write poetry like Syd Barrett of the early Pink Floyd and play guitar like Jimi Hendrix. So he aspired big, but he scored somewhere more in the pop range. All right, that's all I have. Everyone stay safe. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. If you go out, be careful out there. And be kind to each other. Listen, thanks for listening to me ramble on. Everyone have a great weekend. Thank you.